What's going on, everybody? This is the blockchain backer bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, we're going to be talking about the altcoin market and its relationship to the Bitcoin price chart and when it is that we end up seeing the altcoins move on their own majestic runs. And in particular, we're going to be using a lot of the scenario of what we're seeing right now for Bitcoin compared to when we saw this last time, which would have been in September and October of 2020. Now, there are a variety of elements that are present there for Bitcoin, making it absurdly similar to what occurred back in 2016. If you've been watching this YouTube channel, of course, you've seen it, how often these peaks and these breakouts are happening with each other, even 300 days in happening at the exact same time, or in this case, 700 days in, they both break the range at the exact same time. Here we are finally escaping this range at the same time. So there's certainly a lot of confluence to 2016's recovery, which was the recovery after a super cycle had completed, which is the type of recovery we were looking for. So we're definitely showing a lot of confluence to 2016, but we know that our most recent range and price behavior for the last 6 months has really mirrored that of 2020 before things got ramped up big time in the crypto market. Now, if you caught the last video that I put out, we were talking a lot about Bitcoin and trying to solve the puzzle on what could be the next thing in store for the price chart. Of course, we referenced to 2016, reference to the price behavior of 2020, and discussed that confluence between the NASDAQ 100 technology sector and the Bitcoin price chart with price behavior and recoveries. And still, that question still needs to be answered. And considering we're only 3 days out from us finally breaking out of this 200 plus day range, we're still waiting for more price action to emerge to give a clue. We know that from 2016, when this breakout happened in here, we pretty much just repeated what we had done for the prior 200 days. We had built a support and a range on top of a previous resistance. We finally broke out. Then we spent another 200 days building a new support on top of the previous resistance until finally we moved out again. If that is the circumstance, well, it would say, hey, there's only like a week left of upward momentum left in Bitcoin, and then get ready for a whole new 200-day range to come in here. In that circumstance, you look back to 2016, you look at the altcoin market, how did it behave in that time? You had a couple that did begin bull runs then, but the vast majority of the market still just stayed flat during the rest of that time. If this is still the scenario that's going on here, well, that's how it played out last time. A couple of them did go to all-time highs or get darn near close to them, but the vast majority still just continued that ranging for 200 more days. However, when this happened in 2020, things did play out quite differently from that. The actual start of the bull run did actually begin right over here for the altcoin market. But the crypto market did actually have a trick up its sleeve during this whole time, planting the seeds of doubt, time-based capitulation, and jealousy-based capitulation, along with a lot of frustration. So I figured it would be good to go ahead and look through the market and see how was it acting in this time period, because it may act different than you suspect. Now, to understand the time period we're talking about for Bitcoin, it's right back in here. Zoom in on that really quick, and this is the consolidation, this is the liquidation, this is the everybody screaming we're going to 3 to 4K, then here is the breakout right here, and it's like we're right there right now when we look at Bitcoin here in 2023 compared to 2020. And you can see that we zoom out, right? That's the spot that we're talking about. So in this time, what did the altcoin market do? And I think a good example to throw on is Ethereum to get just a clue of how this market was behaving. When you look at the price action of Ethereum, you say to yourself, hey, this is all pretty on point. Everything is pretty much on the same time. And then there you go. There's that little break up, just like we're seeing over here for Bitcoin, right? Everything pretty much looks the same. Until you actually zoom in and you realize the timing was slightly different and created a different narrative in the market. You definitely see that price looks the same as it does here for Bitcoin, but it's not until you zoom in a lot closer to see the timing of those events were not at the exact same time. Put that in here. I'll clean this up. That you could see when Ethereum finally gets back to there, it's actually like a month after that. When Bitcoin's break up happens, Ethereum doesn't actually get back to the high in here and actually drifts. The bull run did eventually come for Ethereum, but really zoomed out, our eyes play a little bit of a trick on us to think these events occurred simultaneously when actually Bitcoin went first. And so we're talking about Bitcoin right here in this initial breakout that happens, which is right here. And when we start overlaying these altcoins, we see behavior just like this. Here's Ethereum, like we're just talking about. Problem is, Ethereum doesn't reach its height yet until the next push up that happens in Bitcoin. Here's this whole waddle sideways where price just keeps grinding, but you could see in here, Ethereum has an initial burst. But then during this grind, Ethereum just kind of pulls back until the next move, and then finally it goes. And it sticks much closer with Bitcoin. However, had interesting behavior in this period. That's not just for Ethereum, that's also the same for XRP. Again, take a look at this, that you could see this is the point in which Bitcoin is breaking out from its range, yet XRP not even close yet until the next one. The same is true over here for Cardano. You could see the initial break here. Cardano's price pulls back in here and then eventually goes. The same is true for VeChain, breaks up, pulls back, then goes. The same for Chainlink. Here's the height of this range from back in here. In this range, pulls back, then goes. Here's Dogecoin, range way over here, range here, price breaks up, still diverges here during this period, then finally Doge gets going. And again, like we just showed over here with Ethereum, which we know at the end of the bull run was very confluent with Bitcoin. But it's when we start putting all of these on here at the exact same time, we do see that interesting behavior emerging in there of what occurred during this particular time period. And it's that while the altcoins were very tied to Bitcoin during almost every move of Bitcoin's price action, there was one period where a divergence emerged, and it was right here. Bitcoin up, altcoins fade, then they all get tied back together again. What's the narrative? Bitcoin only, Bitcoin only, Bitcoin only. Capitulating on altcoins, they're dead. Why are we not popping up? You could see that Bitcoin's popping up. Why are we not popping up? This is terrible. And then boom, they all come back. You can see that also when we add on total 2, which is everything except Bitcoin. You see the divergence that emerges right in here. And if we look at total 3, which includes everything except Bitcoin and Ethereum, same thing occurs. And if we look at others, almost similar, but more so flat. Still does not leave the top of the range, but shows more strength than total 2 or total 3. So what is it? Right? The lower and mid cap market cap stuff is really the better performing sector of the altcoin market in this phase. Remember that we just said that, and we see that on this chart here, that the lower caps, others, is really the better performer rather than total 3 or total 2 when we include Ethereum or when we include the remainder of the top 10. Others was the better performer, even though it's still trended flat to sideways in here. But what we clearly see is there's a divergence in here in price where we weren't seeing that divergence prior. You could see these all moving along together in here, all these ups, these downs, ups, downs, ups, 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 suddenly up, down. That's really the only time we see that divergence happening in here. Otherwise, it's super correlated. Then in this one phase, there is this divergence. So what are you going to get in this time period? Bitcoin's the only one. Altcoin's doomed. And then, boom, they all come back. So when this breakout happens right here back in 2020, what happens with the altcoin market? We can see the altcoin market pops up with it in that initial pop. We'll get all of them on here. But now after that initial pop there in 2020, look what happens next as that sideways grind goes. It continues grinding upwards to sideways, and altcoins trend down in that time. That is a pain trade in the market because time elapses here too. This takes weeks. This is from October 22nd until November 4th. It's about 2 weeks. That's enough time where FOMO has already kicked in. Frustration that altcoins pulled back suddenly when it looked like the altcoins were going with. Suddenly they're pulling back during this phase. That's enough time for social media to ramp up and people scream, it's going to be Bitcoin only ETF. Nobody wants your S coins. And then eventually, wham, you go at the exact same time when that next breakout from that next range occurs. And that really gets everything kicked into motion and prices start going, which I'll hit play on this again right now. And you can see how things eventually ended up playing out. And so even right now, we don't know if this is the same as this. Do they look similar? You better believe it. Is price the same? You better believe it, right? The sentiment of the market was identical to that point, right? Everybody thinking we're going to 3 to 4K down in here. Everybody thinking we're going to 12K down here, 23, 20, 16K, whatever, lower, right? massive wrong footing of the market. Market participants get left behind. That's the same thing that happened in 2020. And then initial pop happening in the market. And we see that happening over there in the altcoin market. Now, I don't know what narratives are being spun to you and whether or not the altcoin market's doing well. But just like we talked about earlier, we said others was the best performer in this environment, right? Like we look at total 2, total 3, and you look at others. Total 2 is going to include everything except Bitcoin. Total 3 is going to include everything except Bitcoin and Ethereum. And others is going to include everything excluding the top 10. And so everything below that top 10 was the better performer in the initial move here in holding itself up with strength and being able to get much closer to that range height. That's also what we're seeing right now. You can look back over here to February of this year and see that others is already poking up above February of this year. Whereas you can see down here, total 2 still well below, total 3 still well below, but others leading the way in strength. And if you're not paying attention, if you're only looking at the top big names that are there in the market, you wouldn't know there's a secret bull run that is going on in the crypto market that just may not be in your vision. That if we like sort these over here on CoinMarketCap by 7-day returns, you could see just in the top 100, there's plenty in here that have outperformed Bitcoin over the course of the last week, with Bitcoin way down here. Whereas all of these assets in the top 100 have been outperforming Bitcoin just this week. Then when you move over there into the top 200, many more as well that are outperforming. But if you're just looking over here at like the top 10, you're thinking to yourself, well, Bitcoin's up 20% on the week. It's really just the best performer for the most part outside of just a couple. But it's actually not true, because the assets that are located in others and outside of the top 10, all over the place, you're seeing prices just absolutely rip on these things, which is why we see the most strength happening here in others right now. And it's also what we saw happen here in 2020 at the same time too, is that others had more strength and a bigger breakup in here than total 2 or total 3, until finally the whole market reset itself back in sync, and off and away it went. But it was this moment in time that was very particular in itself, where a divergence did eventually happen in here. But the thing trying to be mindful of here is that the market did move up in this moment right here, but then as time set in, a fade started to happen. And it would be that we haven't started that fade just yet, that we'd really just kind of be like right here. There's a bunch of excitement happening in altcoins right now, but the longer this thing sets in, suddenly that fade does kick in here. And so the question remains, are we going to get that? Because you could just see like, a couple attempts to hit the high in here that puts you right there. That means you're just right here. Take that off right there on that little wick right in there. And you can see that that phase had not started yet in that moment. There was still excitement happening in altcoins. They're still kind of ripping to the upside a little bit. But then suddenly a dynamic changes and it becomes, oh no, Bitcoin's the only one. And so my point of it all is to say, hey, it's exciting. We got out. This is great. But when we had this right here, this small little grind of Bitcoin really shifting up 7% or so, enough time elapsed and a divergence emerged in here that was enough to trick market participants. And if we zoom out of here, we take these things off, you can see throughout all of it, it is perfectly correlated. All the correlation is perfect. And then suddenly there's a market dynamic shift only in this one particular spot. And it happens everywhere. And the market got tricked. So I'm mindful of this, that this would be a temporary event before recorrelation would happen. And there's no question some type of narrative will come out, some type of pushing of a narrative that Bitcoin's the only one would occur in an event like this. And a lot of people will fall for it. So keep it in mind. If this ends up being the scenario that does play out and we're not following 2016, but we slow ourselves down big time and something like this happens in there, that would be a dynamic shift that would be acceptable and normal and temporary before recorrelation. This is just an opportunity to wrong foot the market. But as you could see, was the moment that eventually led to all the excitement. So couple of weeks. If that is the case, right? That's a couple of weeks to have the opportunity to do all the research that you possibly can to figure out how you want to handle that. Trying to shoot from the hip at the last second when things are getting wild proves to be incredibly emotional, and poor decision making is done. But there's a little bit of an opportunity here for some time to kind of figure things out, build a plan. How are you going to handle it? Where is the fundamental strength within this market? If that's the case, you got pretty much a couple weeks to figure that out. Otherwise, you're just going to be green candle chasing with everybody if that event it does end up playing out. So view it as an opportunity and to have a little bit of an edge over the market where most market participants would be quite confused. But on that note, guys, that's what I see going on out there. I hope you found that informational and educational. I want to thank you so much for watching. If you're looking for extra content from me, of course, you could check out bcbacker.com, which is a course with over 40 videos and 11 hours of content on here. It's $39. There's no subscription fees, no recurring payments in here. Of course, teaching you how to set up all of your own charts and your own indicators and teach you about those indicators and patterns and ranges and Wyckoff method and Elliott wave theory, but also discussing a lot of the historical behavior of the cryptocurrency market and a lot of other kind of edge information that can help understand how this market behaves, how the psychology of this market behaves, and of course, helping with your own emotional management. It includes downloadable spreadsheets in here as well, so you can put those on your hard drive or print them out. That's over here on bcbacker.com. There's a link in the description of this video and all of my videos. Otherwise, guys, I wish you a wonderful day. I want to thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.